Oh, landmines and jellyfish. Welcome back to Knives, I guess, and there you are. I get scared when you're gone. But do me a favor and hit that like button, or you'll be forced to listen to They're All Gonna Laugh at You by Adam Sandler 17 times in a row. Man, that was peak 90s. Whoo, boy. But this week we've been carrying the Demko AD20.5, and this was a gift from Adam for America. Let's take a second to thank him in the comments for making this shindig possible. That was huge. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for that, and he sent 2 of them, no less. Like, that was huge. But let's take a look at what we're holding, because it'll bother you if I don't, and you know I love you. So, first things first, and most importantly, the pocket clip is tip up, which is the Lord's carry. We have got the gray Grivery scales on this thing. The pocket clip is reversible. We have got the shark lock, we got the thumb stud, and we have got the thumb hole, so let's flick the shark. And we got 2.875 inches of AUS 10A steel. Now that we got through that, we did the preamble. I will say the shark lock is a ton of fun to fidget with. Like, this is a fun lock. Like, you can fidget with that for hours on end. Like, I really, really enjoyed messing with that. I didn't get to enjoy messing with it quite as much as I wanted to. You know, I had my hands full at work, so I didn't have a ton of time to dedicate to it, but there were times I was walking through the back room and my brain would be 20 minutes ahead of where I was. So I'd just be kind of unconsciously flicking it open and closed while I'm walking around the back room thinking about stuff, but I didn't get to do that very often. You know, if I did that at home the way I wanted to, the wife would have beaten me to death with a pillowcase full of 18650 batteries. You know, she's one of those people, she doesn't like that noise. She doesn't like the noise of nail clippers doing what they do. Like, and she's one of those people, and I can't blame her. That's one of those noises where it's only cool when I do it. So I really, really like the shark lock. It was a lot of fun to mess with. And of course, the action on this thing felt great. You know, the centrifugal opens on this thing are really nice and easy going. Like, they are very nice. Playing with the shark lock was nice. The thumb hole, that thing feels really good. Like, everything about this feels really good. The thumb studs on here feel quite redundant. You know, you already got the thumb hole, you got the shark lock, and its centrifugal opens. Like, you've already got 3 deployment methods that all work very, very well. You know, now there are guys that like to slow roll open off of the thumb stud, and I'm not mad at those guys. I get it. You have your own preference. It's not for me. It's just when the thumb studs become redundant, I don't like them so much. You know, they kind of create another area that I have to watch out for when I'm sharpening, and at least it's got a flathead screw on there you can remove. You know, so they did kind of account for that, and I could take the thumb stud off and put it in a box, but, you know, I kind of like having them how they came from the box, minus the edge I end up putting on after Cardboard Slayer. So it was an absolute pleasure to carry. You know, I loved having this thing in my pocket. There weren't a ton of drawbacks, but I will say, the dingus end right here, the way it's shaped, it made a very flat shelf, and that did catch on stuff, and I had to kind of fight to get stuff out of my pocket around it. That's kind of the only drawback I've found of this knife, was just it's in your pocket. If you got anything else, it's going to hang up on that, and it's going to make it hard to get that stuff out of the pocket without removing the knife first. You know, and for carrying something like this for a week and using them like I use them, finding only one drawback is pretty nice. You know, it didn't carry, it carried very, very well. But there was that hang up right there that was a bit worse than other knives we've carried, not as bad as others. So, you know, still, like, I loved having this thing on me. Now this thing did well enough on the factory edge. You know, you guys have heard it before, most of you, but if you're a new face, one of the tests that I use is cutting the plastic wrap off of the pallets at work. Now, a decent edge will blast through the layers in the middle where you got all the layers piled up on top of each other. You get down to the bottom layer where there's just one layer left behind. A very, very good factory edge will blast through it like you're cutting water. This thing hung up and tore a little bit, not much, but it was noticed. If you put some tension on it and it pulled it tight, it was fine. You know, I'd give the edge about a 7 out of 10. Really good edge, could be a little bit better. Now, cutting through cardboard. I do break cardboard down at work, and those cuts were sublime. Oh my God, they felt so good. Like, this is what I look for and what I want knives to feel like when I'm cutting through cardboard. It felt so good. And of course, all those cuts that I made, it was just like make the cut, and every time I was like, ooh, daddy like. And that's a weird situation. Like, English is three languages stacked on top of each other in a trench coat. And you could have said, ooh, daddy like. And it means pretty much the same thing, but it feels very, very different. You got a different vibe when you cut through and you're like, ooh, dad like. Side tangent, but like just that word. Like there was a band during the big band revival a good 20 years ago called Cherry Poppin' Daddies. That's already kind of on the edge. But, again, the word means about the same thing, but if you call them cherry poppin' dads, oh my god, it sounds so much worse. Total side tangent, but I spend way too much time thinking about that fact. Like it pops up and I spend like a couple hours just dwelling on the extreme contrast there. Total side tangent. But back to this thing. The texturing on the scales is pretty aggressive. Like this is an aggressive texture, but I expected it to hang up and make it difficult to get into the pocket and hang up like we've had other aggressive textures do. No, didn't really create a problem. Not a big deal to get it into the pocket, not a big deal to get it back out. It surprised me, and it was a very pleasant surprise. I expected it to be quite difficult, but no. And with the texturing on it, I don't really have any qualms with handling this with wet hands or other adverse circumstances because that texturing has got a lot of traction on it. I got to take a lot of pressure off and rub it basically to really break traction on that and have my thumb move around. So they did a good job on the texturing, and they did a good job getting it just right where it's not going to be an issue getting it into and out of your pocket. And it's one of those things, the build quality on this feels fantastic. We've handled a lot of good knives in the 50 and below range where they had the good build quality and they felt really good, but this right here is just that little bit extra. Like it's kind of a known fact when you're making something or designing something, that extra 10% takes like, 100% more than that first 90%. And this has that. This has that extra little bit, and it's hard to articulate in a way that I can translate through camera. The build quality is just that much better. Now, the price tag may be a little steep. It's a little bit of sticker shock at $120. Especially with it being AUS 10A, a lot of guys will look down on that when it could have been S35VN or a different steel you can get in that price point. But I mean, AUS 10A is still a perfectly good steel. You're really paying for the build quality. You've got that limited lifetime warranty, and I'm pretty sure if I broke this and sent it in anyways, they would fix it or replace it. Demko has a pretty good reputation for the build quality and how they support the customer, as far as I know. Now, I haven't experienced it firsthand, so some of y'all may know a good bit more than I do, but you guys are kind of watching me in real time get my brain wrapped around the fact that, the HRC and edge retention isn't the end-all be-all within reason. I love the way D2 performs. It has some of the best edge retention we have checked out, and it keeps the price of a knife down low enough where most of us can afford it. Now, as a home gamer, breaking down some cardboard at work and doing light cuts at home and popping tape, the edge retention on that, you're never really going to notice a huge difference unless you get down to like 3 CR where you can't hold an edge for more than about 45 minutes doing Cardboard Slayer. So that edge retention, that HRC is not the end-all be-all within reason. And I'm coming to terms with a lot of steels are perfectly good that aren't D2. Everything gets compared to D2 because we've done a lot of D2. We know a lot about D2. But not everything has to be compared apples to apples with D2. The AUS 10A is perfectly good steel. We did the Formax Scout and AUS 10A, and that performed well enough on our edge retention testing with Cardboard Slayer, even though that is a thick slab of steel with basically an axe grind on it. Having to sharpen a piece of steel that thick, even with it being ground down, is still a lot of material behind the edge. It still did pretty good, and we have had thick slabs of steel like that. The edge broke down a bit faster because basically it's got an axe grind on it, so that tells me the steel's perfectly good, and I am hoping the way this thing feels when it slices and how sublime that is, it's going to hold up really, really well to Cardboard Slayer, and I would love to see it perform better than D2. That would be so good. So yeah, I mean, it's just and this is me learning as I go, you don't have to have perfect edge retention. You don't have to have it perform like D2, and especially with a steel that's going to be tougher and less prone to chipping out, it's good to have. And if I was doing heavier cuts, I'd definitely be happier with this than something that, again, is going to chip out a little bit, especially if you push the edge a little too hard, rather than something like this where it's a tougher steel and it's just going to handle that stuff a lot more gracefully. Now, one thing that I will say is this thing right here is a knife guy's knife. You know, I showed this to people at work, and they didn't really seem all that impressed. You know, and these are the same guys I showed, say, the Valentine's Day gas station knife, and they saw that and they're like, oh, that is nice. They saw this and not very impressed. I feel like you have to have handled a good few knives to really, really understand how cool that shark lock is and how much of a departure that is from other deployment methods. You really have to have handled a good few knives to understand, how the build quality feels overall, how that detent feels. Like, you really have to understand the finer details before this really kicks in and you're like, oh, this is good. You know, because it's not that exciting looking of a knife. It's just, it's got that shark lock, and for us that have handled the axis locks and stuff like that, that's where it comes into its own. So that's most of what I wanted to cover, but let's take a look at our factory edge after a few cardboard cuts and a little bit of light use stir carry. So we had a pretty good number going into that, and we have still got a nice clean cut. I am assuming this is going to be around the 250s. Like, that is still a nice cut. You know, it's not the kind of fine edge that I put on them when I'm sharpening my own stuff, but it's still pretty damn good. So how this thing works is it does measure the number of grams of force it takes to cut through the wire on this calibrated test clip. We're going to get a new clip out. We're going to take one sample. All right, we could take 80 samples and get slightly different numbers everywhere we go because we're only testing an area as wide as the wire is itself. But I am curious as to how it's doing now. And I don't remember the number I got a week ago, but that's okay. All right, we're going to get one sample right about here. And we got a 207. So that is really, really good. Like, we have had knives deteriorate a lot faster, but holding on to that edge and having that good of an edge, especially when we go into Cardboard Slayer, really good. That 207 is a good number. Again, we've been seeing a lot of 250s and 270s on the factory edges from stuff that is nice, your Vostige, your Civivis, stuff like that, CJRBs, 250s and 270s. So the 207, I am really happy with seeing. I am really, really happy with that. So that's everything that I can think of to share with you guys about this and my overall experience. At the end of the day, I really, really like this thing. This has become one of my favorite knives. It's going in the drawer. Like, this one may be a gift to my brother. I've also got the drop point, and I like that drop point a bit better than the shark foot, but we had to do the shark foot if we're going to do a shark lock. You know, so this is one of those that's going in the drawer with the stuff that I carry when I'm having a rough day, because sometimes a nicer knife just helps me feel a little bit better going into the day. So it's definitely going to be there for that. And, yeah, like, just all in. One of my favorite knives I've had, top 10 territory. So, all that being said, thanks for looking at my crap. Subscribers, you guys are awesome. Y'all keep coming in. I appreciate you so, so much. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We got our live streams, regular videos. There's plenty of activities. Comments, I love some feedback. Let me know what you think about this thing, especially if you have a shark lock too. And again, let's thank Adam for America for making this shindig possible. I will link off to Cutting Lace EDC's Diamond Emulsion if you want to step your stropping game up. That's not an affiliate link. I don't make any money, just supporting a friend of the channel and a small business. But all that being said, y'all have a nice day.